a few ideas about how the Quran guides humanity in order to obtain knowledge. We have guidance that thinks of knowledge as a supreme value. It is the religious scholar and historian Franz Rosenthal who wrote, "For the unsophisticated reader of the Quran, it would suffice to assume by numerous explicit statements in the Holy Quran itself provided a satisfactory solution for the problems of the origin and character of knowledge." We're talking about the study of epistemology. What is knowledge? How is knowledge acquired? And how do we grow in knowledge? The prophet said, and he said this often, knowledge comes to human beings that is given or taught to them by God. That in fact, the only knowledge there is God has taught to humanity, beginning with the first human being. Which is to say that Allah, God, guides humanity with revelation and with the intellectual tools that enable us to interact with the entire ordered universe so that human beings can grow in knowledge. The Holy Quran paints this picture. It says, "Behold, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, in the alternation of the night and the day, in the sailing of ships through the ocean, for the profit of mankind, in the rain which Allah sends down from the sky, and the life he gives therein, to an earth that is dead, in the beasts of all kinds that he scatters through the earth, in the change of winds, and the clouds which they trail like their slaves between the sky and the earth. Here indeed are signs for people who are wise," putting the emphasis on learning and examining the universe and growing in knowledge. The Holy Quran is guiding believers to use their intellectual tools to observe the order of the universe to acquire knowledge. This knowledge is further justification for the belief of all data that is correct and all data that is true. This is in contradiction to data that is not correct and data that is not true. We are guided to follow the signs that govern the world around us. It is also important to know that for Muslims, all knowledge is religious. All knowledge is religious knowledge. All truth points to the creator of all. One purpose to acquire knowledge is to gain greater understanding of God and the reality he created. The Holy Quran puts it this way: "High above all is Allah, the King, the truth. Be not in haste," the Quran says, "with the Quran before its revelation to thee is complete, but say, O my Lord, advance me in knowledge." To advance in knowledge requires faith in divine guidance. Believers must choose to learn, which requires patience and perseverance. By choice, humanity affirms the intellectual foundation on which to govern their thinking and to govern their behavior. And at the end, is accountable to God and God only. Why learn? Because God wills it to be. Why be accountable? Because God wills it to be. This means if you are to be successful, we must be responsible for our ethical discernment, and follow the truth of an ordered existence, which is best in the final determination. and it is the foundation that determines everything in the future. The Holy Quran says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, give full measure when you measure, and weigh with a balance that is straight. That is the most fitting and the most advantageous in the final determination. This verse guides Muslims to the responsibility for just measure. This requires knowledge of being accurate and further justification for our accountability to Allah. The Holy Quran says further, and pursue not that which thou hast no knowledge. For every act of hearing or of seeing or feeling in the heart will require or be inquired upon on the day of reckoning. We further advise not to be ignorant, because every act or thought has consequences in the world that requires knowledge for human survival. It was Dr. Ibrahim Catlin who wrote, "Rationality is a human response to the call of reality." So we need to be rational and knowledgeable in even to survive in this reality. Justified belief. I want to talk a little bit about that because it is a part of epistemology. Epistemology is the theory of knowledge, especially with regard to its method, validity, and scope. It is an investigation of what distinguishes justified belief from mere opinion. Justification is based on sound reasoning. Muslims start with the Holy Quran and the tradition of the Prophet. There are some people who talk about religion in very esoteric ways, which is good, but this is calling the Muslim to investigate a solid world that's around them 24/7, so to speak. This is to build a rational foundation for what we believe to be true and not mere opinion. Rosenthal wrote in his book, Knowledge Triumphant, all human knowledge specifically comes from God. He further wrote, much more important, however, is the obvious assumption throughout the Quran that human knowledge, that is, true human knowledge, is to be equated with religious insight. They go hand in hand. In support of his views, he mentions this Quranic verse. God will lift up by degrees those among you who have come to believe and those who have been given knowledge. The Quran clearly stating that faith is equated to one's knowledge. At the same time, the Quran is establishing in the Muslims' minds justification for the elevation of a person or community who believes in the truth and therefore is guided by it. Truth is self-evident and justifies one's progress. Logic in Islam is considered a tool, not something we worship. It is a system of knowing. It is what is called in Arabic an ilm, a scholarly discipline. It was the science that produced certainty of knowledge. In Arabic, it's called el-ilm el-yaqeen, certainty of knowing. Logic provides the justification and the system of classification for scholarly and scientific disciplines. It influenced the discussions of hadith scholars and historians as to the possible ways of attaining truth. Logic, according to Rosenthal, is a tool used by Muslims in order to understand the world around them. And Muslims have forgotten about this great tradition, and to obey the command of God to seek knowledge. The Quran states, if they kept their faith and guarded themselves from evil, far better have been the reward from their Lord, if they but knew. The Quran says, you are those who fell into disputing even in matters which you had some knowledge. But why dispute about matters in which you have no knowledge? It is Allah who knows, and you know not. Now we're talking about using rationality and also understanding the limits of your ability to know. So just acknowledge it. There are some areas that you don't know, and Allah does know. The rationality is then a function of existence and thinking and takes place in a communicative and intersubjective context. To say that something is intelligible means that it has a certain order and structure by which we can understand it. We can also communicate. There's a correspondence going on in nature. The human mind is understanding and learning from it. It also means that since it is intelligible, it can be communicated to others through language and rational arguments. In conclusion, Iman in Arabic, I am translating to mean certainty of knowledge, a deep, heartfelt faith. As is understood by other traditions, knowledge is equated to the highest of faith. The destiny of mankind is represented as a struggle for knowledge by means of various scholarly disciplines. The quest for knowledge, therefore, produces the need for logical and other rational tools. The Quran guides humanity to faith in truth that is justifiable. This knowledge enables all human beings to freely interact with the laws of the universe in order to discover those eternal principles that never change and is the foundation of all human progress. I hope this has been beneficial. There are a couple of scholars that were mentioned. Go look them up. Rosenthal and Catlin are very, very easy to find. Read their writings on knowledge and rationality. Thanks a lot.